My name is Caleb Evans, and most of the time, I live up to it, quiet, reserved. I just bailed on a business dinner, my head still buzzing from the bourbon and the relentless noise. We'd closed the deal, and Henderson and his crew were amped, already planning the after-party. I just waved them off. No thanks. I was running on fumes, my stomach burning. The Uber dropped me off at the curb. I looked up at my condo window, dark as a pit. Right. Another night, squaring off against the cold, empty air. I let myself in, fumbled for the switch. Click. The track lighting flared on. The place was huge. I'd thought I was buying my forever home, setting myself up for life. Now it just felt cavernous. The shoe rack held only my own pairs. The foyer was clean enough to reflect my exhausted face. A small victory, I guess. Less to clean. I tossed my coat on the sofa and went to get some water, but the dispenser was off. Forget it. Too lazy to wait for it to cool. The silence in the condo was oppressive. I could practically hear the dust settling. I don't know what possessed me, but I found myself wandering onto the balcony, hoping the night air would clear my head. And that's when I saw it. The pothose plant Leah had left behind. When we divorced, she'd been surgically precise in packing her things. Not a single bobby pin, not a stray hair left for me to stumble upon, as if terrified I might actually miss her. But she'd forgotten, or maybe just abandoned, this half-dead plant. I could barely remember what it looked like when it was healthy. Now it was a pathetic sight. The leaves were yellowed and drooping, the edges scorched brown. The soil in the pot was cracked and dry, one stiff breeze away from giving up the ghost. It sat there in the corner, a perfect match for the empty condo. Something twisted in my gut, a sharp, sudden pang. The craving for a cigarette hit me out of nowhere. I dug a crumpled pack from my pocket, shook one out, and lit it, inhaling deeply. Quitting was a joke. This was real. The smoke burned in my lungs, but it seemed to tamp down the formless anxiety clawing at me. Staring at that dying plant, I thought about what Jake had said over beers a few days ago. He'd been hesitant. Cal, man, I think I saw Leah the other day. I was busy firing off a work email on my phone, didn't even look up. Yeah. Over on the west side, he continued. She looked, I don't know, wiped out, carrying this huge bag by herself. Looked like she was living in one of those old tenement buildings. What did I say back? Something like, none of my damn business. We're over. A clean break. That's what I'd always believed in. But now, looking at this neglected, dying pothose and thinking about Jake's words, a dark fire started burning in my chest, mixed with something else I couldn't name. It was a suffocating feeling. Hadn't she been so proud? So insistent on leaving? Hadn't she refused to take a single dime? How did she end up in the kind of place Jake described? A plant without water will die. Her, alone in some shithole apartment. Would she? The cigarette burned down on my fingers, snapping me back. Shit, I had to find her. Right now. I leaned against the cold balcony railing, the filter of the cigarette smoldering against my skin, and I hadn't even noticed. A single thought hammered in my head. I had to find Leah. But where? The day we split, I deleted everything. Her number, her contacts, even the stupid recipe app she used. I thought I was being decisive, cutting ties, starting fresh. Now I just felt like a fucking idiot. Jake. Jake might know more. I grabbed my phone, my thumb scrolling clumsily through my contacts until I found his name. It rang several times before he picked up, the background noise a wall of sound. He must have been at some club. Yo, Cal, what's the word? They moved the after party? Jake yelled over the music. No, listen, I need to ask you something. I paused, my throat suddenly dry. You said you saw Leah. Where exactly? The line went quiet for a second, the music softening as he must have found a quieter spot. Cal, man, why are you asking about this now? Cut the crap, Jake. Just tell me where you saw her. My tone was sharper than I intended. He hesitated. On the west side. I don't remember the exact street. It was an old neighborhood. There was a taco truck on the corner. You okay, man? Yeah, got it. Later. I hung up before he could ask anything else. The west side. An old neighborhood. A taco truck. That could be anywhere. I ran a hand through my hair, frustrated. The next day at work, I was a ghost. The project manager was droning on in the morning meeting, and I didn't hear a word. All I could see was that dying plant and Jake's voice saying, she looked. Wiped out. By the afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I made up an excuse and slipped out of the office, heading straight for the west side. The area was a maze of tired, pre-war buildings, their brick facades crumbling, wires strung between them like sloppy spiderwebs. The streets were crammed with bodegas and laundromats, the air thick with the smell of fried food and a kind of permanent, damp decay. It was a different universe from my clean, sterile high-rise. I slowed the car to a crawl, my eyes scanning every building entrance. I saw a few taco trucks, but there were too damn many. I couldn't just pull over and ask each one, "Hey, have you seen a woman named Leah? Kind of pale, thin, looks like she's having a real bad time." They'd think I was a lunatic. I drove around for nearly an hour, finding nothing. I felt ridiculous, like a headless chicken. Jake probably just saw someone who looked like her. Or maybe Leah didn't even live here. Maybe she'd left Chicago, was doing just fine somewhere else. My heart sank. I was about to turn back when, waiting at a red light, I glanced at the entrance of a particularly run-down apartment building. And just like that, I froze. A woman in a gray coat was walking out, her head down. She was hauling a massive canvas tote bag, the weight of it pulling one of her shoulders down. She was much thinner, her profile sharp and angular. In the sickly yellow glow of the streetlight, her face was pale, almost translucent. It was Leah, no doubt about it. She stopped at the curb, setting the heavy bag down to catch her breath. She looked left and right, probably waiting for a bus. Her eyes swept past my car without a flicker of recognition, completely vacant. My heart hammered against my ribs, my palms slick with sweat. On pure instinct, I yanked the steering wheel, swerving into a quieter side street and nearly clipping a row of trash cans. I slammed the car into park and just leaned against the wheel, breathing like I'd just run a marathon. Shit, I'd actually found her. She was living in a place like this. What was in that bag? It looked so heavy. And she looked. Jake was right. She looked exhausted. Not just physically tired, but a deep, soul-crushing weariness that radiated from her. I stayed in the car, not daring to get out. What would I even say? Confront her about how shitty her life seemed? By what right? "Hey, ex-wife, looks like you're not doing so hot without me, huh?" The words were bile in my throat. So I just watched her from a distance through the windshield. The evening wind whipped her dry-looking hair around her face. She shivered, pulling the collar of her coat up higher. After a few minutes, a beat-up cargo van pulled up. She struggled to lift the heavy bag into the back, then climbed in herself. The van sputtered away, leaving a trail of black smoke. I started my car and followed, keeping my distance. I knew it was creepy, stalker-level stuff, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to know where she was going, what she was doing. The van drove for about 10 minutes before stopping behind what looked like a wholesale market. Leah got out, said something to the driver, and then dragged the massive bag by herself toward a low-slung building next to the market. A faded sign hung over the door. I could just make out the words "Garment Works." I watched her slender back disappear into the doorway. The anger I'd been feeling evaporated, replaced by a sour, heavy feeling in my gut. So that bag, it was full of clothes? She was working here, doing manual labor. I sat in my car and lit a cigarette, not smoking it, just watching it burn down. So she'd refused the condo, refused the money, just to end up hauling heavy bags in a place like this? Leah, what the hell was the point? Was it for some ridiculous sense of pride? Or did you really just want to have nothing to do with me that badly? The cigarette burned my fingers. I flicked the butt out the window and started the car. I had to figure something out. I couldn't just storm in there. Knowing her temper, she'd probably throw that entire bag of clothes right in my face. I stayed parked outside that workshop for a long time, until the sky was completely dark and a few weak lights flickered on inside. My mind was a tangled mess. Storming in was a non-starter. I knew that stubborn streak of hers. You could sooner move a mountain. If I showed up now, she'd probably try to brain me with a sewing machine. I needed a plan she might actually accept. Over the next few days, I turned into a full-blown stalker. I figured out her routine. She left her apartment around 7:30 every morning, walked 10 minutes to the bus stop, and rode 5 stops to that garment workshop. Her hours were erratic. Sometimes she was done by 7 or 8, sometimes later. She was always dragging that same goddamn heavy bag. The old apartment complex she lived in was called the Concord Homes, a name with a dated, almost ironic optimism. I went inside one day while she was at work. The reality was worse up close. The hallways were cluttered with junk, the walls plastered with peeling flyers and takeout menus. Her building was the most decrepit of them all. I found an old-timer fanning himself on the front stoop and offered him a cigarette. "Hey there," I said, "thinking about renting in this building. You know if anything's available?" The old man squinted, took the cigarette, and tucked it behind his ear. "Renting? Good luck. Place is a dump, but it's cheap. Haven't heard of anyone moving out." My heart sank a little. "So, mostly long-term residents?" "Pretty much." "Oh, wait. The young woman on the 3rd floor is a renter." He gestured with his chin. "Moved in a little while back. Real skinny, quiet type. She, live alone. Yep. You know, it ain't easy for you young folks these days." He was off, rambling. From his chatter, I pieced together a few things. Leah was renting a single room. The landlord sounded like a real piece of work and was threatening to raise the rent. Raise the rent? An idea started to form. A couple of days later, I called in a favor from a buddy of mine. I had him dress up, look like a slick real estate agent, and go knock on a landlord door. He called me back later, sounding disgusted. Cal, your ex. Man, that landlady is a nightmare. Said the girl's easy to push around, so she's jacking up the rent and the kid won't say a word. Also complained she hears her crying or something at night, called her bad luck. I sat there, flicking my lighter open and closed, open and closed. How much is the rent? For that little shoebox? $1,200 a month. She wants to raise it to $15. It's highway robbery. I did the math. In a sweatshop like that, how much could Leah possibly be making? 3, maybe $4,000 a month max? After rent and food, what was left? I need you to do something for me, I said, snapping the lighter shut. Go to her. Tell her you're an agent. Offer her my small condo on the north side, cheap. Say the owner is out of the country long term, wants a quiet tenant, and is flexible on the price. That condo wasn't far. It was older, but 100 times better than the Concord homes. More importantly, it was safe and clean. My friend was baffled. Cal, what's the point of all this? Why not just give her the money? She won't take it. I shook my head. I knew her too well. A handout would feel worse than a slap in the face. Just do what I said, and don't mention my name. It was a brilliant plan, I thought. I was the silent benefactor, the hero in the shadows, arranging everything for her. The next day, my friend called me, his voice grim. Dude, it was a total bust. I found your ex-wife. Laid it on thick, told her the rent was only $1,000, no security deposit. At first, she just listened, real quiet. Then she asked me. Asked you what? She asked, did Caleb send you? I froze. Of course I said no. I told her I was just an agent. Then she smiled. It was a weird smile, man. Kinda gave me the creeps. My friend sounded shaken. She said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm fine where I am. And she just shut the door. Cal, how the hell did she know? I hung up, a strange feeling churning in my stomach. She guessed immediately. Of course she had. Things that seem too good to be true usually are. And maybe she could still sense me. Somehow. So much for the covert operation. I was out of ideas. A few nights later, after working late, I found myself driving toward the Concord homes again, as if the car had a mind of its own. Fall was setting in, and the evening air had a real bite to it. I parked in my usual spot, watching her building from a distance. The light in her window was on. She was home. Just then, I saw a figure stumble out of the building's entrance. It was Leah. She was in thin pajamas and slippers, a coat thrown haphazardly over her shoulders. Her hair was a mess, and her face was terrifyingly white in the streetlight. She looked frantic, desperate, glancing wildly from side to side, as if searching for something. What was wrong? My heart ceased. Without thinking, I threw open my car door and ran toward her. Leah. She stopped dead, spinning around. When she saw me, her eyes were vacant for a second, then filled with a massive, panicked confusion and helplessness. She was clutching something in her hand. What is it? What happened? I gasped, out of breath as I reached her. She stared at me, her lips trembling, unable to form words. Mimi, my cat. She ran out. I can't find her. She opened her hand. It was a small pile of cat food. Her eyes were red-rimmed with unshed tears, her voice cracking. It finally registered. She was like this because her cat ran away. She'd run out into the cold in her pajamas. Okay, don't panic, I said, trying to keep my own voice steady. What does she look like? What did she get out? Which way did she go? Orange tabby, little white patch on her neck. She stammered. I just opened the door for a delivery. She shot right past me. I can't find her. What do I do? The tears finally fell, fat drops splashing onto her cold hands. Seeing her like this, a needle of pain twisted in my chest. The old Leah, the one who couldn't open a pickle jar and was a bit of a clean freak, was now standing in the freezing wind in her slippers, crying over a lost cat. It's okay, I'll help you look. She couldn't have gone far. I took off my coat, intending to put it around her shoulders. She flinched away instinctively. My hand froze in midair. The moment turned awkward. She sniffled, wiping her face with the back of her hand, avoiding my eyes. Her voice was a whisper. No, thank you. I can find her myself. She turned and started walking along the line of scraggly bushes, her voice hoarse as she called the cat's name. Mimi, Mimi. I watched her thin back, my chest tight with a mix of frustration and sorrow. Damn it. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and went after her. I'll help. 2 people are faster than 1. My tone left no room for argument. I'll check over here. You look in those bushes. The wind that night was like a razor cutting at our faces. Leah, in her thin pajamas, shivered as she pushed through the dead leaves of the hedges. Her voice choked with sobs as she kept calling for that stupid cat. I couldn't stand it. This wasn't looking for a cat. This was self-punishment. Get in the car and wait. I grabbed her arm. It was ice cold. This is useless. The wind spooked her. She's probably hiding in some nook. I'll find her. You're just getting in the way. She tried to pull away, but she was either too cold or too distraught to have any strength left. I steered her toward my car. Get in. Turn on the heat. I'll bring her to you when I find her. She didn't argue this time. She glanced at me, her eyes hollow, then clutched my coat tighter and stumbled toward the car. I let out a breath. Hell, this was more stressful than closing a multi-million-dollar deal. I used my phone's flashlight to search meticulously around her building. Under cars, behind trash cans, in piles of junk, I checked every corner. Part of me was cursing this cat for causing so much trouble. The other part terrified I wouldn't find it, picturing Leah's face. I didn't want to think about it. After half an hour, covered in grime and about to give up and just print lost cat flyers, I finally saw two little green lights glowing from behind a broken heating duct. A dirty orange cat was huddled in the back, watching me warily. It had a small white patch on its neck. Mimi. I tried, the name feeling awkward on my tongue. It hissed a low, threatening growl. Great. A feisty one. I crouched down, trying to look non-threatening. I remembered the few bits of kibble that had fallen from Leah's hand, pulled them from my pocket, and offered them slowly. The cat sniffed them, but didn't eat. It did seem less hostile, though. I reached out slowly. It shrank back, but there was nowhere to go. I saw my chance, and snatched it by the scruff of the neck, pulling it out. It yowled, claws flailing, and raked a few red lines across the back of my hand. You ungrateful little fur ball. I saved your life, and you scratched me, I muttered, tucking the squirming bundle under my arm and heading back to the car. Leah was pressed against the window, her eyes wide. As soon as she saw the cat, she threw the door open. Mimi. She ran over and practically ripped the cat from my arms, hugging it tight, burying her face in its dirty fur, her shoulders shaking. The cat, now in her arms, was perfectly calm, rubbing against her chin. I stood there, the back of my hand stinging, the cold wind making it worse. She held the cat for a long time before finally looking up, her eyes and nose red. Thank you, she whispered, her voice raw. It's fine. I shook my hand. Just a scratch. I'll live. She finally noticed the bloody marks on my hand and froze, a complicated expression in her eyes. I'm sorry. Just get inside before you catch pneumonia. I cut her off. You found your cat. Go on. She stood there, clutching the cat, looking from me to the dark entrance of her building. She hesitated. Do you want to come up and wash that? The cut. It should be cleaned, in case it gets infected. She said it quickly, her voice so low it was almost lost in the wind. I was stunned. I never expected her to ask. The hallway wasn't much better than the outside, a musty odor mixed with the unique smell of an old, decaying building. The motion-activated light flickered on and off, illuminating the stained and peeling walls. She lived on the 3rd floor. She pulled out her keys and unlocked a rusty metal door. It opened into a narrow corridor shared by several apartments, cluttered with shoe racks and random junk. She walked to the very last door and unlocked it. The moment it opened, a heavy wave of herbal, medicinal smells and cat litter hit me. The room was tiny. You could see it all in one glance. A twin bed, a cheap fabric wardrobe, and a small table piled with clutter and a half-empty bottle of pills. In the corner were a food bowl and a water dish for the cat. The window was closed, but a cold draft still snaked its way in. It was tidy, in its own way, but you couldn't hide the cramped poverty of the place. She seemed flustered, putting the cat down and quickly gathering some clothes off the sofa. You can. Sit. I'll get the first aid kit. The so-called first aid kit was an old cookie tin filled with some Band-Aids, antiseptic wipes, and cotton swabs. She took out a wipe and a swab, then stood in front of me, unsure what to do next. Your hand. I held it out. She carefully opened the wipe and began to clean the scratches. Her head was bowed, her focus intense, her soft breaths brushing against my skin. I could feel that her fingers were cold, and they were trembling slightly. Neither of us spoke. The only sound was the orange cat purring as it rubbed against my legs. So, my throat was dry. I broke the silence. This is where you live. Her hand paused for a fraction of a second. She didn't look up. Yeah, it's fine. It's cheap. And that job at the workshop? Is it hard? It's okay. Her voice was even quieter. Why? The question I'd been holding back finally burst out. Why would you rather haul bags in a place like this than accept my help and swallow your pride? Her hand stopped moving. After a few long seconds, she slowly lifted her head and looked at me. Her eyes were glistening, but they were mostly filled with a kind of exhausted numbness. "Caleb," she said, her voice soft, but it hit me like a hammer. "We're divorced. What I do is none of your business anymore." She tossed the used wipe in the trash and closed the cookie tin. "It's clean now. You should go." And there it was, back to square one. Just when I thought there was a thaw, she slammed the door shut in my face. I looked at her, at this cold little room, at the pile of pills on her table, and that dark fire ignited in me again. But this time, it wasn't anger at her. It was anger at myself, at this whole damn situation. I shot to my feet. She jumped, shrinking back, a flicker of alarm and fear in her eyes. That look was like a bucket of ice water, shocking me back to my senses. What was I doing? Trying to intimidate her? I took a deep breath, forcing my emotions down. "Fine, I'm leaving." I walked to the door and pulled it open. A blast of cold air rushed in. I paused without turning back. "Take care of the cat. If she runs off again, you might not be so lucky." With that, I closed the door, shutting the heavy medicinal smell and the suffocating atmosphere behind me. The hallway was pitch black. The light didn't come on. I just stood there for a long moment, not moving. The antiseptic on my hand felt cold and sharp. Walking down the stairs, my feet felt like they were encased in lead. The musty smell of the building seemed to have clung to my clothes. Her words, "None of your business anymore," played on a loop in my head, set to the image of her dull, lifeless eyes. Shit. I cursed under my breath, not sure who I was even cursing. Back in the car, I didn't leave right away. I just stared up at her third-floor window. The light was still on, a weak, yellow glow. What was she doing up there? Cuddling that damn cat? Staring at that pile of pills? When she was cleaning my hand, I glanced at the labels on those pill bottles. The names were unfamiliar, definitely not for a cold or the flu. And that herbal smell that clung to her. Jake had said she didn't look good. He wasn't exaggerating. But with her keep-out attitude, she was completely unreachable. How was I supposed to help? Force wasn't an option. She looked like a strong gust of wind could knock her over, but the stubborn fire in her eyes was still burning bright. It was infuriating. The next day at work, my mind was a million miles away. I'd sit down to reply to an email and just stare at the screen, unable to type a single word. All I could see was that tiny, grim apartment and her cold hands. At lunch, on some strange impulse, I pulled out my phone and opened the browser. Relying on my hazy memory from the night before, I typed in the names of the medications I'd seen. The search results loaded, and my stomach dropped. One was an anti-anxiety medication, another was a sleeping aid, and the third was an antidepressant. I clicked through the links, reading the descriptions: persistent depressive mood, loss of interest or pleasure, anxiety and tension, sleep disturbances. Every word was a tiny needle pricking at my temples. So it wasn't just a bad mood. It wasn't just that she was tired. All those times she would burst into tears for no reason, pace the living room in the middle of the night, snap at me over the smallest thing. It wasn't because she'd changed or because she was being difficult. It was because she was sick. And what had I done? I thought she was being irrational. I thought she was just looking for a fight. I argued with her, gave her the silent treatment. And when she finally asked for a divorce, I actually felt relieved. I leaned back in my office chair, my chest so tight I could barely breathe. The office AC was blasting, but I felt feverish. So when she left, taking nothing, was it because she felt like she was a burden? Was it guilt? Was that why she was living in that dump, doing manual labor, and taking all these pills with their shitty side effects? I shot up from my chair, startling the guy in the next cubicle. "Cal, everything okay?" "Yeah, just need a smoke." I went to the fire escape and lit a cigarette, but I didn't smoke it. I just watched the ash grow longer and longer before falling away. This wasn't over. She could say it was none of my business all she wanted. I was making it my business. But how? I couldn't just barge in and say, "Hey, I know you have depression, so let me take care of you." She'd probably throw the pill bottle in my head. I needed a plan she couldn't refuse. I left work early that afternoon and drove back to the Concord homes. I didn't get too close. I found an inconspicuous coffee shop across the street and sat by the window, waiting. Around 7, she appeared. Same drab clothes, same heavy canvas bag, head down as she walked toward the bus stop. Her silhouette just screamed exhaustion. I waited until she was on the bus, then paid my bill and followed in my car. The bus rumbled along for 7 or 8 stops before pulling over near another old housing complex. She got off, but instead of heading home, she turned into a small community health clinic. My gut tightened. I got out and followed her in. She picked up a prescription at the pharmacy window, then took her bag of meds and sat on one of the plastic chairs in the hallway, waiting to be called. Her head was bowed, her fingers twisting together. She looked so utterly alone. I hid around a corner, a sour taste in my mouth. Since when did she have to come to a place like this by herself to wait in line for medicine? She used to hate doctors. Every time she had a cold, I practically had to drag her to a clinic. After about half an hour, I heard her name called. She went into an exam room. I hesitated, then crept closer. The door wasn't fully closed. I could hear a doctor's voice. How have you been feeling lately? Is the sleep any better? Any side effects from the new medication? Her voice was tiny, muffled. Still not sleeping. Headaches. Nauseous. I can't eat anything. In your mood? Same as always. Nothing feels worth it. Her voice was flat, lifeless. The doctor sighed. You can't stop taking the medicine. You have to be consistent. Living alone, you need to be extra careful. Let me know if anything changes. I couldn't hear the rest. My ears were ringing. Can't eat, can't sleep, not worth it. The words spun around me like a vice, squeezing tighter and tighter. When she came out, her face was even paler than before. She was clutching another bag with new prescriptions. I shrank back into the shadows as she walked slowly out of the clinic and stood at the bus stop. The wind blew her hair across her face. She just stared blankly at the traffic, standing there for a long time. In that moment, I wanted to run over there, shove her in my car, and take her home, whether she wanted to go or not. But I couldn't. I watched her get on another bus and disappear into the flow of the city. I stood there on the sidewalk and reached for a cigarette, my hand shaking. Damn it, this was my business. This was very much my business. I didn't go back to the office. I turned the car around and drove home. The half-dead pot hose was still on the balcony, looking like it was on its last legs. I stared at it for a long time, all this pent-up frustration with nowhere to go. I walked over, filled a glass with water, and slowly poured into the pot. The dry, cracked soil drank it up greedily, making a faint hissing sound. Damn it, I couldn't just let it die. After watering the plant, I collapsed on the sofa. The silence was deafening. The doctor's words, Leah's pale face, her saying she couldn't sleep, felt sick, that nothing was worth it. It all played on a loop in my mind. How had I not seen it before? Was I too busy with work? Or did I see it and just ignore it, writing it off as her becoming difficult and high maintenance? Shit. I scrubbed a hand over my face, my chest tight. I couldn't force it. In her state, she couldn't handle being pushed or scared. I had to find a way in, a way she would accept. The next day, I went back to the Concord Homes. This time, I didn't stake it out from the coffee shop. I went straight to the little convenience store on the ground floor, bought some fruit, milk, and a bag of premium cat food. Carrying the bags, I took a deep breath and headed upstairs. I hesitated for a moment in front of her beat-up door before knocking. No answer. I knocked again, a little harder. Who is it? Her voice came through the door, laced with suspicion. It's me, Caleb. A long silence followed. So long I thought she wasn't going to open it. Then I heard the lock turn and the door open a crack. She peered out, her eyes as dull and tired as ever, questioning. What do you want? She made no move to let me in. I held up the grocery bags. I was in neighborhood. Thought I'd check in. And I brought something for the cat. The excuse was so lame, even I didn't believe it. She glanced at the bags, then back at me, saying nothing. How's your hand? She asked suddenly. I was taken aback. I held up the back of my hand. Fine. It's almost healed. Another awkward silence. Well, thanks. She reached for the bags, still not intending to let me in. I didn't let go. Not going to invite me in for a minute. I tried to sound casual. This is kind of weird, standing in the hallway. She chewed on her lip, her eyes darting away as she hesitated. Just then, there was a loud clatter from inside the room, like something falling over. Her expression changed instantly, and she spun around, rushing back inside. I didn't wait for an invitation. I pushed my way in after her. It was the orange cat. It had jumped onto the table and knocked over a pill bottle, sending tiny white pills scattering across the floor. She was frantically trying to pick them up, her back to me, looking panicked. I closed the door and knelt down to help her. The pills had rolled everywhere. Her fingers trembled as she gathered them, avoiding my eyes, quickly shoving them back into the bottle as if they were some shameful secret. Are you okay? I asked. I'm fine, she said, her voice muffled. She clutched the bottle tightly and put it back in the farthest corner of the table. He's just too playful. The atmosphere was tense again. The feline culprit, however, was now rubbing against my leg, meowing, having smelled the cat food. I opened the bag and poured some into his bowl. He immediately dived in, eating with loud purrs. See? He likes it, I said, trying to fill the silence. Huh. She stood off to the side, wringing her hands, still visibly uncomfortable. I glanced around the room. It looked even more squalid in the daylight. The window pane seemed to have a crack, letting in a draft. On the table, besides the medication, were half a stale bagel and a jar of pickles. A pang went through me. Is that what you're eating? Her eyes followed my gaze, and she flinched as if burned, quickly snatching the bagel and pickles and putting them away. Just a snack. I wasn't hungry. Bullshit. I'd looked into the kind of work she did. It was physically demanding. How could you get by on that? I bit back my anger and didn't call her out. I put the milk and fruit I bought on the table. Eat something with some nutrition. Look how thin you are. She stared at the items, not moving, not saying thank you. After a moment, she whispered, "You should stop coming here." Why? It's not appropriate. She looked up, her eyes filled with a stubborn exhaustion. We're divorced, Caleb. You doing this? It makes things difficult for me. And me watching you eat stale bagels and pickles, that doesn't make things difficult. I couldn't help it. My voice rose. Me watching you waste away, sick and all alone, that's not difficult. Her eyes welled up instantly. She turned her face away. You don't have to watch. But I have to, I shouted, the emotions I'd been suppressing for days finally breaking free. Leah, for God's sake, look at yourself. If you're sick, get treated. If you need money, tell me. What's the point of toughing it out like this? To prove how noble you are. She whipped her head around, tears streaming down her face, her voice trembling. Tell you? Tell you what? That I can't sleep and I feel like I'm going crazy? That I'm so nauseous I can't eat anything? That I feel like there's no point in being alive? Would you have even listened back then, Caleb? You just thought I was annoying. You thought I was being dramatic. She was gasping for air, the tears flowing faster. Yes, I'm sick. I was a burden on you. So I left. Isn't that what you wanted? I'm staying far away from you. Isn't that enough? I'm begging you, just leave me alone. Can't you just let me rot here by myself? Stop coming around and reminding me of what a failure I was. After her hysterical outburst, she was trembling all over like a leaf in a storm. Her words stunned me. My heart felt like it had been viciously squeezed, a raw, aching pain. So that's how she saw it. Watching her break down, all my anger vanished, replaced by an overwhelming wave of regret and a deep, painful empathy. I took a step toward her, wanting to hold her. She recoiled like a startled rabbit, bumping into the table and making the pill bottle wobble. Her eyes were wide with terror and defiance. Don't touch me. My hand froze in midair. The room was filled with the sound of her suppressed sobs and the cat crunching on its food. After a long moment, I slowly lowered my hand. My voice was hoarse. Okay, I'll go. I turned and opened the door. Take your meds on time, I said, my back to her, and the cat food. Let me know when you run out. I didn't wait for her answer. I closed the door behind me. Standing in the hallway, listening to the muffled sounds of her crying, I leaned my forehead against the cold metal door and stood there for a long time. Damn it, this wasn't over. The door was thin, her choked sobs seeping through it, like a dull knife scraping against my insides. I leaned against the cold metal, smoking one cigarette after another, a small pile of butts quickly forming at my feet. Her words hit me like body blows, leaving me bruised and aching. So, in her eyes, I'd just been an asshole who found her annoying. And maybe I really had been. I don't know how long I stood there before the crying inside finally tapered off and fell silent. I stubbed out my last cigarette and tried the doorknob. It wasn't locked. When I'd left, she hadn't locked it behind me. I pushed the door open gently. The overhead light was off. Only a small desk lamp cast a dim, yellow glow. Leah was curled up on the small sofa by her bed, seemingly asleep. Tear tracks stained her face, her eyes swollen and red. The orange cat was nestled in her lap, watching me with wary eyes. On the table, the stale bagel and pickles were gone. The carton of milk I'd brought was open, a small amount of it gone. An apple was missing from the bag of fruit. My chest loosened, just a fraction. At least she knew she was hungry. I tiptoed over, intending to cover her with a thin blanket draped over the back of the sofa. As I got closer, her eyelids fluttered. She woke with a start, and seeing me, she instinctively shrank back. The cat, disturbed, leaped to the floor. You're still here. Her voice was raw and nasal. Her eyes, beyond the exhaustion, held a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. A guarded panic. I was worried you'd try to jump out the window, I said, try to sound casual as I tossed the blanket over her. It's cold. Cover up. She clutched the blanket, not saying anything, not looking at me. The tension returned. I pulled over the creaky wooden chair from the corner and sat down, keeping a small distance between us. Leah, I began, taking a breath and looking out at the dark sky. Let's talk, just for a minute. Don't kick me out yet. She was silent, her fingers picking nervously at the edge of the blanket. What you said earlier. I'm sorry, I said, my voice rough. I shouldn't have yelled at you. Still nothing. This sickness. When did it start? I asked as gently as I could. Her fingers stopped moving. After a long moment, she whispered, it's always been there a little. In college. Sometimes I get really down. You just never noticed. My stomach dropped. That long ago. Then, after I started working, the pressure, it got worse. Her voice was flat, as if she were talking about someone else. Couldn't sleep, didn't want to eat, would cry for no reason. Nothing felt right. Then, why didn't you tell me? I regretted the question as soon as it left my lips. She'd already answered it. Sure enough, a bitter, humorless smile touched her lips. Tell you what? Caleb, I think I have depression. I feel awful. What would you have thought? Would you have been patient, help me see a doctor? Or would you have thought I was overreacting, being dramatic? I had no answer. With the temper I had back then, it would have been the latter. I probably would have complained she was interfering with my work. Later, it just got harder to control. She continued in a small voice, almost to herself. I was always picking fights with you, making things difficult. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. And when I saw how annoyed you were, how you avoided me, I just hated myself even more. She sniffled, burying her face deeper into the blanket. The divorce. I was the one who asked. I knew you were tired of it, too. The condo, the car, you earned all of it. I had no right to any of it. Leaving, it was better for both of us. She spoke calmly, but every word was a gut punch. So all her drama, her irrationality, it was the illness talking, and I, in my ignorance, had just gone along with it, pushing her right out of my life. Did you see a doctor? Have you been seeing one this whole time? My throat was tight. I have, she said softly, and I've been taking the medicine. It doesn't seem to help much. I've seen different doctors, tried different prescriptions. I feel sick when I take them, and even worse when I don't. She paused, her voice dropping to a whisper. And the money, it's almost all gone. So that's why she was doing manual labor. That's why she was living in this dump, eating stale bagels. My chest was so tight, I could barely breathe. I wanted to say something, but my throat was clogged. The room fell silent again, filled only by the sound of the wind whistling through the cracked window pane. After a long moment, I stood up. She tensed immediately, her eyes snapping to me. I didn't look at her. I walked to the table, picked up the half-empty carton of milk and another apple, and went to the kitchen area, which was really just a small sink and a bit of counter space. I found a dull paring knife and started peeling the apple. Caleb, she said from behind me, her voice filled with confusion. I kept my back to her, concentrating on peeling the apple, though it was coming out lumpy and uneven. Stop eating stale bagels. It's bad for your stomach. I handed the peeled apple to her. She stared at it, not taking it, her expression unreadable. Take it. I pressed it into her hand. Leah, for everything back then, I was an asshole. I didn't see it. I'm sorry. Her fingers trembled as she held the apple. But when you say we're divorced and should go our separate ways, I can't do that. I looked her straight in the eye, my voice deadly serious. Seeing you like this right here, I pointed to my chest. It's fucking killing me. You don't have to feel like you owe me anything. Don't feel pressured. Just think of me as an annoying ex-husband who won't leave you alone. I tried to lighten my tone. You're sick and need to get better. Don't worry about the money. She looked down at the apple in her hand, and silent tears started to fall again, splashing onto her skin. Don't cry. I felt helpless. I pulled a tissue from a box and offered it to her. You'll hurt your eyes. She didn't take it, didn't look up, her shoulders just shaking silently. I sighed and placed the tissue next to her. I'm going. You, take care of yourself. I walked to the door and pulled it open. Caleb, she suddenly called out to me. I stopped and turned back. She looked up, her eyes as red as a rabbit's, her voice tiny and choked with tears. I can't eat the apple. I looked at the apple, which she'd taken a single, small bite of before putting it down. A sour feeling rose in my throat. Okay, I said, just leave it for now. Tomorrow, I'll bring you some soup. Something warm. I didn't wait for her to refuse. I closed the door behind me. This time, I didn't linger in the hallway. I walked straight down the stairs. The tightness in my chest had eased, but it was replaced by something heavier, like a waterlogged stone. I knew this was just the beginning. The next morning, I was up at the crack of dawn. I hadn't slept well, my mind a chaotic jumble of Leah's tear-streaked face and the pill bottles on her table. I went to a local diner she used to love and got a container of chicken noodle soup, a side of plain crackers, and some steamed dumplings. I had no idea what her appetite was like, so I figured I'd start with something mild. I got to her building a little after 7. The old complex was already awake, seniors heading out with their grocery carts. I carried the breakfast upstairs and stood in front of her door, taking a deep breath before knocking. I had to knock several times before I heard a shuffling sound from inside, followed by a meow. The door opened a crack. Leah stood there in her worn-out pajamas, her hair a mess, her eyes puffy. She looked at me, pale and still half asleep. You're here so early? Her voice was raspy. Breakfast delivery. I held up the bag. Hot chicken noodle soup. It's good for your stomach. She stared at it for a second, then took the bag, the warmth seeping through the plastic into her hands. She didn't say anything, just stood there blocking the doorway. Well, eat it while it's hot, I said, looking at her. She glanced down at the bag, then back up at me. Her lips parted as if to say something, but in the end, she just stepped aside. Come in. The apartment still smelled of medicinal herbs and cat, but it seemed less overpowering today. The apple from last night was gone, probably thrown away. She placed the food on the small table and stood off to the side, looking lost. Sit down and eat. I pulled out the rickety chair for her and leaned against the wall myself. I already ate. She hesitated before slowly sitting down and opening the bag. The soup was still steaming. She held the spoon, but didn't move. Not what you wanted? I asked. She shook her head, then scooped up a small spoonful and slowly brought it to her lips. She took a small sip, then another. I let out a quiet breath of relief. As long as she was eating, the orange cat, drawn by the smell, came over and meowed. I broke off a piece of a dumpling, blew on it to cool it down, and put it in his bowl. The room was quiet, filled only with the soft sound of her sipping soup and the cat purring as it ate. She finished about half the bowl before putting the spoon down. That's it. I frowned. I'm full, she said softly. Thank you. Did you take your medicine? I asked. She paused, her eyes shifting to the pill bottle in the corner of the table. I'll take it later. Take it now, I said, my voice firm. I'll watch. She looked up sharply, her eyes filled with a flicker of defiance and shame. Caleb, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. I cut her off, walked over, picked up the bottle, read the instructions, and tapped out 2 pills. I handed them to her along with the half glass of water she'd left. Take them. She stared at me, her eyes welling up again, but this time she didn't cry. After a tense standoff, she finally took the pills and water, swallowing them in one gulp. She winced, as if she'd just swallowed something incredibly bitter. Watching her take the medicine, I felt a knot in my stomach finally loosen. From now on, I'm coming every morning to make sure you eat breakfast and take your meds, I said, my tone flat like I was stating a fact. She looked at me, stunned. Don't you have to work? Work isn't as important as you taking your medicine. I put the lid back on the soup container. What do you want for lunch? I'll bring it over. Caleb. Her voice rose, laced with panic and refusal. You really don't have to. I can manage on my own. Manage my ass, I said bluntly. Manage by eating stale bagels and pickles. Manage by living on pills until you look like a ghost. My words left her speechless. Her lips trembled as she turned away from me. Leah, I said, putting the soup down and looking at her profile. I'm not asking. I'm telling you. I'm taking this on. You can yell at me. You can try to kick me out. It won't work. Unless you leave Chicago where I can't find you. I'll be here every single day. She whipped her head back, her eyes glistening, a flash of anger in them for being cornered. What gives you the right? We're divorced. The right is that I know now. My own temper flared. The right is that I can't just stand by and watch you destroy yourself. Is that reason enough for you? She stared at me, her chest rising and falling rapidly, a mixture of anger and helplessness on her face. Finally, as if all her energy had drained away, she slumped, her head bowed. Her voice was barely audible. Do whatever you want. With that, she turned away, walked to her bed, and lay down, pulling the covers over her head, completely disappearing. Was that acceptance? Or was she just too tired to fight anymore? I looked at the small lump under the covers, a mix of emotions churning inside me. Fine, do whatever I want it is. I cleaned up the breakfast things, throwing away the trash and putting the leftovers away. I refilled her electric kettle and turned it on. The water's boiling. Drink some later. I'll be back at lunch, I said to the motionless lump on the bed. No response. I stood there for a moment, then picked up the trash bag and left. Downstairs, I tossed the bag in the dumpster. The morning sun was surprisingly bright. I took out my phone and sent a text to my assistant. Push my morning meeting to the afternoon. Personal matter. She replied instantly. Okay, Mr. Evans. I leaned against my car and lit a cigarette. It was going to be impossible to focus on work. But strangely, the frantic anxiety that had been hounding me for days seemed to have subsided. At least she took her medicine. And she ate some hot soup. It was a start. For the next few weeks, I became a permanent fixture at the Concord homes, showing up 3 times a day like clockwork. I brought breakfast and watched her take her pills. I brought lunch, and I came by in the evening to make sure she'd eaten dinner. Leah's initial resistance and silence slowly morphed into a grudging acceptance. She still rarely smiled and spoke in monosyllables, but there was a subtle shift. The hard shell she'd built around herself seemed to be thinning, just a little. At least now, when I walked in, she didn't immediately tense up, and she would actually take the things I handed her. One afternoon, I got there a bit early. She wasn't back from the workshop yet. I waited by the convenience store downstairs, chatting with the old-timer on the stoop and giving him another cigarette. "That young woman on the third floor," I began casually, "must be tough living here all alone. Does she ever have family visit?" The old man took a drag from his cigarette and shook his head. "Haven't seen a soul. Moved in by herself, dragging this huge suitcase. Look pitiful, I tell you. Nobody ever comes to see her, except for the occasional delivery guy. Although a while back, some guy came looking for her. Didn't look like a good dude. Yelling and screaming, almost got into a fight. My gut tightened. A guy? What did he look like? 40s, maybe? Wore a leather jacket. Loud as hell. Yelling something about, 'Your parents don't want you. You can just die out here.' Real nasty stuff." The old man grimaced. "That girl, she's usually quiet as a mouse, but that day she fought back. Cussed him out good. Guess the guy got bored and left, still cussing up a storm." "Parents don't want you? Die out here?" When we were married, I'd asked Leah about her parents, but she was always evasive. At our wedding, the only family on her side was an uncle. Something clicked in my mind. Her illness, her self-destructive pride, her refusal to lean on anyone. When Leah finally appeared, dragging that heavy bag, I didn't immediately go to her. I watched her struggle to pull it off the back of a delivery trike, her forehead beaded with sweat, her steps unsteady. I walked over and silently took the heavy bag from her. She was startled, but didn't protest, simply letting go. We walked upstairs in silence. She unlocked the door. I put the bag in a corner and went to get her a glass of water. She sat on the small sofa, breathing heavily, her face even paler than usual. I handed her the glass. She took it, her fingers ice cold. The old guy downstairs was just telling me. I said casually, my eyes on the cat that was now rubbing against my leg, that some guy came looking for you a while back. Said there was a lot of yelling. Her hand, holding the glass, jerked, spilling a little water. She looked up, her eyes instantly filling with alarm and a hint of panic. "Who was it? What did he say?" Her voice was tight. "Didn't say much. Just that you argued. I left out the nasty parts." "Who was it? Is he trouble? Do you need me to—" "No." She cut me off, her tone sharp as she slammed the glass down on the table. "It's my business. You don't need to get involved." There was again. I looked at her, suddenly bristling like a cornered cat. The pieces in my head were starting to fit together. "Was it your father?" I asked. Her body went rigid. She turned her face away, not looking at me, not saying a word. It was a confession. What did he want? Money. I tried to keep my voice calm. From the few vague things she'd mentioned in the past, her dad was not a good person. She remained silent, her fingers digging into the edge of the sofa cushion. "What about your mom?" I pressed. As far as I could remember, she never talked about her family. She let out a short, bitter laugh, the sound cold and sharp. "My mom? She can't even take care of herself. She's in a hospital, a psychiatric hospital." I was stunned. "So?" My throat felt dry. "Your illness. It's like hers." "Yes, it's genetic." "Happy now?" She whipped her head around, her eyes bloodshot, filled with a mix of suppressed pain and self-loathing. "That's our family secret. The crazy gene. Now you know, right? You can leave now. Stay away from me before you catch it too." She was getting hysterical, her breathing ragged, her shoulders starting to shake again. Her words hit me like a physical blow, leaving me feeling bruised and numb. So that's what it was. It wasn't just work stress. It was something she was born with, a shadow she could never escape. She was so terrified of being a burden, so terrified of ending up like her mother. I watched her, on the verge of a complete breakdown. I didn't say anything. I didn't leave. I waited until she calmed down a little before speaking, my voice hoarse. "So back then, you were always afraid I'd get tired of you. You were afraid of this." She bit her lip, silent tears streaming down her face. It was another confession. "Your dad, he doesn't take care of your mom." I asked. "Him." A smile that was more painful than a grimace twisted her lips. "He wishes we'd both just disappear. When my mom got really sick, he took all the money we had and vanished. Changed his number, never showed his face again. Now somehow he found out I was here, and he's back demanding money. Said if I don't pay up, he'll cause trouble for me at work." Her voice broke. She buried her face in her hands, her thin shoulders shaking violently. I stood there, watching this woman cry her heart out, a furious anger rising in my chest. Not at her, but at that worthless piece of trash father, at this goddamn, unfair world. I took a step forward, intending to pat her back. She slapped my hand away, lifting her tear-streaked face to yell at me. Just go. Did you hear me? This is my family. This is the father I'm stuck with. A leech. A lost cause. Are you satisfied now? Have you seen enough of my pathetic life? She was completely hysterical, pushing me away and running into the room, sweeping everything off the table. The pill bottles, the water glass, the soup I'd brought, sending it all crashing to the floor. Shards of glass and pills scattered everywhere. The cat, terrified, shot under the bed. Go. Just go. She screamed, her chest heaving, gasping for breath. I don't want your pity. I don't want you to see any of this. Get out. Get far away from me. I'm begging you. By the end, her voice was a raw, broken thing. She slid down the wall, completely drained, and buried her face in her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. The sound was filled with so much shame, pain, and humiliation. I looked at the mess on the floor, at the small, broken figure huddled in the corner, and my heart felt like it was being crushed by an icy hand. I didn't leave. I stepped over the debris and knelt in front of her. Are you done? I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. She was trembling too hard to answer. If you're done, then listen to me. I looked at her shaking shoulders. Your father is a scumbag. That's a fact, but that has nothing to do with you. It's not your fault. Her sobbing quieted a little. You are you, and he is he. Let him rot. You live your life. I continued, my voice steady, firm. And I'm not here because I pity you. I paused, took a deep breath, and finally said the words that had been stuck in my throat for weeks. I'm here because I can't let you go. Her crying stopped abruptly. Her shoulders went still. The room was silent, save for her quiet, hitched breaths. After a long, long moment, she slowly lifted her head from her knees. Her face was a mess of tears, her eyes swollen, but they were filled with a dazed, raw, and utterly disbelieving expression. She stared at me, her lips trembling, as if she wanted to speak but couldn't form the words. I met her gaze and held it. I knew I had waited too long to say that, and she had waited too long to hear it. The spilled soup was slowly spreading across the floor, the air thick with the smell of medicine and food, a total disaster. But in the middle of this wreckage, something finally felt like it was starting to change. The floor was still a disaster zone. Soup, glass shards, and pills mixed together in a foul-smelling mess. Leah just sat there, looking up at me, tears clinging to her lashes. Her expression was a chaotic mix of disbelief and something akin to being burned, making her want to look away. I didn't rush her, didn't break eye contact. The words were out. No taking them back, and I didn't want to. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She buried her face in her knees again, her shoulders trembling even more violently than before, though she'd stopped crying out loud. Did I scare her? Or did she just not believe me? I sighed, stood up, and, ignoring her, went to find a broom and dustpan. First things first, I had to clean up this war zone. I swept. She stayed huddled in her corner. Neither of us spoke. The only sound was the scrape of the broom on the floor and her suppressed, hitching breaths. After clearing the debris, I mopped the floor twice, trying to get rid of the strange odor. I righted the overturned chair and gathered the pill bottles. Thankfully, not all of them had broken, though plenty of pills were lost. By the time I was done, a thin layer of sweat covered my back. I straightened up and looked at her. She was still in the same position, but she seemed calmer. At least she'd stopped shaking. I walked over and held out my hand. Get up. The floor's cold. She didn't move. My hand just hung there in the air. After a minute that felt like an hour, she very slowly lifted her head. Her red-rimmed eyes looked at my hand, then back at my face. Then, as if making a monumental decision, she lightly placed her hand in mine. Her fingertips were ice-cold and still trembling. I closed my hand around hers and gently pulled her to her feet. Her legs must have been asleep because she stumbled, and I instinctively reached out to steady her. She flinched as if electrocuted, pulling her hand back and retreating a step to lean against the wall. Her head bowed, refusing to look at me. Thanks. The word was barely a whisper. Are you hungry? I ignored her thanks and changed the subject. After all that, it was getting late. She shook her head, then nodded, seemingly unsure herself. The soup's gone. I'll go buy something. What do you want? I asked. Anything is fine. Her voice was still low. Wait here. I went downstairs to a small diner that was still open and got 2 orders of dumplings and a side of wonton soup. When I got back, she had tidied up the remaining mess a bit, at least enough to walk around. She was wiping down the table with a rag, her movements slow and stiff. I put the food on the clean table. Eat. She put down the rag, washed her hands, and sat down silently. I unwrapped a pair of disposable chopsticks and handed them to her. She took them and began eating the wontons in tiny, deliberate bites, as if they were precious artifacts. I sat across from her, eating my own portion. We ate in silence. Halfway through, she suddenly stopped, her head still bowed. Her voice was soft. "What you said earlier, was it true?" I paused, putting down my own chopsticks. "Which part?" She fell silent again, the tips of her ears turning red. I understood. The part about not being able to let you go. Her head dipped even lower, almost in her bowl. "Yeah," I said, my voice quiet but clear. "It's true." Her grip on her chopsticks tightened, her knuckles turning white. Another long silence, filled only by the soft sounds of eating. After what felt like an eternity, she seemed to summon all her courage and spoke, her words quick and barely audible. I can't really let go either." The second the words were out, as if she'd spent her last ounce of energy, she shot up from her seat, took her half-eaten bowl to the sink, turned her back to me, and started washing it with a frantic energy, the water splashing loudly. I sat there, watching her, a soft, warm feeling spreading through my chest. For her to admit that, it was a miracle. I didn't follow her, didn't call her out on her escape. I just sat there and finished the last few dumplings she'd left behind. By the time she was done with her meticulous dishwashing, the blush hadn't quite faded from her face. "Your meds?" I reminded her. "You haven't taken them tonight." "Oh." She walked back to the table, picked up one of the surviving pill bottles, and took her dose with a glass of warm water. No prompting needed. Afterward, she just stood there, looking lost again. "I'm heading out," I said, getting up. "I'll be back in the morning." She nodded silently. I walked to the door and opened it. "Caleb." She called my name. I turned back. She was standing in the soft light from the lamp, twisting her hands together, her eyes darting around. Her voice was very small. "Drive safe." I was taken aback for a second, then nodded. "I will." "Lock the door." I closed the door behind me, but didn't leave right away. I waited until I heard the deadbolt slide into place before turning and heading downstairs. The night air was cool, but I felt a warmth spreading through me. She'd said to drive safe. Okay. It seemed like this long, drawn-out battle was finally showing a glimmer of a truce. Things started to shift after that, slowly. I paid Jake to have a few of his more intimidating friends pay a visit to Leah's deadbeat dad, making it very clear he was to never bother her again. Leah was still quiet, but now, when I spoke, she would sometimes offer a real response. Once, when I was complaining about a difficult client, I saw her smile, a genuine, fleeting smile that she quickly tried to hide, but I saw it. That dying pothose plant I'd moved from my place to hers was now, under my diligent watering, sprouting new, greenish-yellow leaves. One morning, I saw Leah staring at them for a long time. I really thought things were getting better. Until that night. I was heading over after work, carrying takeout, and before I even got to her floor, I could hear shouting, a man's coarse, angry voice, and Leah's sharp, frantic replies. My stomach dropped. I bolted up the stairs. Just as I feared, her door was open. A greasy-looking middle-aged man in a worn leather jacket was jabbing a finger in her face, spitting as he yelled. "I raise you for nothing? You think you're so tough now? You won't give me money? I'll make sure you can't show your face around here again." Leah was pale and trembling, but she stood her ground, yelling back, "I don't have a cent. Get out." "Bullshit. You live here without money? You buy medicine without money? Some guy must be paying for it. Who is it? That kid from last time? Tell him to come out here. I'll break his legs." The man started to barge into the apartment. "What do you think you're doing?" I roared, stepping between them and pushing Leah behind me. The man was startled. He looked me up and down, his eyes filled with a bully's cowardice. "Who the hell are you? Who the hell are you?" I shot back, taking a step toward him. I was taller and in better shape, and he immediately deflated, though he tried to act tough. "I'm her father. It's my right to ask my daughter for money. Who are you to interfere? Get lost." So this was the bastard. Behind me, Leah's fingers were clutching the back of my coat, shaking uncontrollably. I forced myself to stay calm. "She doesn't have any money for you. You need to leave. Now." "She doesn't have money? But you do." His eyes lit up like a hyena smelling blood. "You're her boyfriend, right? Fine, you can pay for her. I spent a fortune raising her, and now it's time for her to pay me back. Not much, just give me 20 grand to start." His shamelessness was so astounding, I almost laughed. "I'm not giving you a single penny. Now get the hell out." "Hey, you little punk, you dare talk to me like that." He lunged, trying to shove me. Before he could touch me, I grabbed his wrist and twisted. He immediately squealed like a stuck pig. "Ow, ow, ow. Let go." "Listen to me," I said, getting close, my voice low and dangerous. "From now on, I'm taking care of Leah. If you ever come near her again, I promise, you will regret it." I shoved him away. He stumbled back, rubbing his wrist, looking at me with a mix of fear and rage, but not daring to come closer. "Get out," I said, my eyes locked on his. He muttered a stream of curses. "Worthless trash, ungrateful bitch," as he scurried down the stairs. I waited until his voice faded completely before I let out a breath, my back muscles aching with tension. I turned around. Leah was still standing there, her head bowed, her shoulders trembling. "It's okay. He's gone," I said softly. She didn't respond. I reached out to touch her shoulder. "Leah?" She snapped her head up. Her face was covered in tears, her eyes red, but filled not with fear, but with a desperate, broken anger. "Why do you have to interfere?" she screamed, her voice cracking. "Did you see that? That's my family. That's the father I'm stuck with. A leech. A parasite. Are you happy now? Did you get a good laugh?" She completely lost control, shoving me away and running into the room, sweeping everything off the table. The pill bottles, the water glass, the soup I'd brought, sending it all crashing to the floor in a chaotic mess. The cat, terrified, shot onto the bed. "Go. Just go," she shrieked, her chest heaving as she gasped for breath. "I don't want your pity. I don't want you to see this. Get out. Get far away from me. I'm begging you." Her voice gave out. She slid down the wall, completely drained, and buried her face in her knees, sobbing uncontrollably, the sound filled with so much shame, pain, and humiliation. I looked at the mess on the floor, at the small, broken figure huddled in the corner, and my heart felt like it was being crushed by an icy hand. I didn't leave. I stepped over the debris and knelt in front of her. "Are you done?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. She was trembling too hard to answer. "If you're done, then listen to me." I looked at her shaking shoulders. "Your father is a scumbag. That's a fact. But that has nothing to do with you. It's not your fault." Her sobbing quieted a little. "You are you, and he is he. Let him rot. You live your life." I continued, my voice steady, firm. "And I'm not here because I pity you." I paused, took a deep breath, and finally said the words that had been stuck in my throat for weeks. "I'm here because I can't let you go." Her crying stopped abruptly. Her shoulders went still. The room was silent, save for her quiet, hitched breaths. After a long, long moment, she slowly lifted her head from her knees. Her face was a mess of tears, her eyes swollen, but they were filled with a dazed, raw, and utterly disbelieving expression. She stared at me, her lips trembling, as if she wanted to speak but couldn't form the words. I met her gaze and held it. I knew I had waited too long to say that, and she had waited too long to hear it. The spilled soup was slowly spreading across the floor, the air thick with the smell of medicine and food. A total disaster. But in the middle of this wreckage, something finally felt like it was starting to change. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She buried her face in her knees again, her shoulders trembling even more violently than before, though she'd stopped crying out loud. Did I scare her? Or did she just not believe me? I sighed, stood up, and, ignoring her, went to find a broom and dustpan. First things first, I had to clean up this war zone. I swept. She stayed huddled in her corner. Neither of us spoke. The only sounds were the scrape of the broom on the floor and her suppressed, hitching breaths. After clearing the debris, I mopped the floor twice, trying to get rid of the strange odor. I righted the overturned chair and gathered the pill bottles. Thankfully, not all of them had broken, though plenty of pills were lost. By the time I was done, a thin layer of sweat covered my back. I straightened up and looked at her. She was still in the same position, but she seemed calmer. At least she'd stopped shaking. I walked over and held out my hand. "Get up. The floor's cold." She didn't move. My hand just hung there in the air. After a minute that felt like an hour, she very slowly lifted her head. Her red-rimmed eyes looked at my hand, then back at my face. Then, as if making a monumental decision, she lightly placed her hand in mine. Her fingertips were ice-cold and still trembling. I closed my hand around hers and gently pulled her to her feet. Her legs must have been asleep because she stumbled, and I instinctively reached out to steady her. She flinched as if electrocuted, pulling her hand back and retreating a step to lean against the wall, her head bowed, refusing to look at me. "Thanks." The word was barely a whisper. "Are you hungry?" I ignored her thanks and changed the subject. After all that, it was getting late. She shook her head, then nodded, seemingly unsure herself. "The soup's gone. I'll go buy something. What do you want?" I asked. "Anything is fine." Her voice was still low. "Wait here." I went downstairs to a small diner that was still open and got 2 orders of dumplings and a side of wonton soup. When I got back, she had tidied up the remaining mess a bit, at least enough to walk around. She was wiping down the table with a rag, her movements slow and stiff. I put the food on the clean table. "Eat." She put down the rag, washed her hands, and sat down silently. I unwrapped a pair of disposable chopsticks and handed them to her. She took them and began eating the wontons in tiny, deliberate bites, as if they were precious artifacts. I sat across from her, eating my own portion. We ate in silence. Halfway through, she suddenly stopped, her head still bowed. Her voice was soft. "What you said earlier, was it true?" I paused, putting down my own chopsticks. "Which part?" She fell silent again, the tips of her ears turning red. "Understood. The part about not being able to let you go." Her head dipped even lower, almost in her bowl. "Yeah," I say, my voice quiet but clear. "It's true." Her grip on her chopsticks tightened, her knuckles turning white. Another long silence, filled only by the soft sounds of eating. After what felt like an eternity, she seemed to summon all her courage and spoke, her words quick and barely audible. I can't really let go either." The second the words were out, as if she'd spent her last ounce of energy, she shot up from her seat, took her half-eaten bowl to the sink, turned her back to me, and started washing it with a frantic energy, the water splashing loudly. I sat there, watching her, a soft, warm feeling spreading through my chest. For her to admit that, it was a miracle. I didn't follow her, didn't call her out on her escape. I just sat there and finished the last few dumplings she'd left behind. By the time she was done with her meticulous dishwashing, the blush hadn't quite faded from her face. "Your meds?" I reminded her. "You haven't taken them tonight." "Oh." She walked back to the table, picked up one of the surviving pill bottles, and took her dose with a glass of warm water. No prompting needed. Afterward, she just stood there, looking lost again. "I'm heading out," I said, getting up. "I'll be back in the morning." She nodded silently. I walked to the door and opened it. "Caleb." She called my name. I turned back. She was standing in the soft light from the lamp, twisting her hands together, her eyes darting around. Her voice was very small. "Drive safe." I was taken aback for a second, then nodded. "I will." "Lock the door." I closed the door behind me, but didn't leave right away. I waited until I heard the deadbolt slide into place before turning and heading downstairs. The night air was cool, but I felt a warmth spreading through me. She'd said to drive safe. Okay. It seemed like this long, drawn-out battle was finally showing a glimmer of a truce. Things started to look up bit by bit. I had Jake make sure Leah's father wouldn't be a problem ever again. It cost me, but it was worth it. Leah was still quiet, but now she'd actually answer me sometimes. Once, when I was complaining about a difficult client, she even let out a small laugh before catching herself. That sad little pothose plant was thriving, sprouting new leaves. One morning, I saw Leah staring at a new sprout for a long time. I really thought things were getting better. Until that day, I got to her place after work with takeout, same as always. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again louder. Still nothing. A cold dread washed over me. I immediately called her phone. It went straight to voicemail. Shit. I slammed my fist on the door. "Leah, open up. Can you hear me?" The next door neighbor, an older woman, poked her head out. "Stop banging. She hasn't been back all afternoon. You're making a racket." "Not back all afternoon?" I knew she usually got off work around 5 or 6. I forced myself to calm down, apologized to the woman, and raced downstairs, dialing Jake as I ran. "Jake, I need you to find someone now. I think Leah's in trouble." "Whoa, Cal, what's going on?" "Slow down." "I can't slow down. Her phone's off, she's not home, and she left work hours ago. Just find out where she could be." My voice was shaking. I jumped in my car, the engine roaring to life. Okay, don't panic. I'm on it." "Do you know anywhere she usually goes?" "Anywhere she usually goes?" All I knew was her apartment, the workshop, and the clinic. Where else would she go? I drove aimlessly around her neighborhood, my eyes scanning every person on the street, my heart pounding in my throat. Horrible thoughts raced through my mind. Did her depression get worse? Did she have an accident? Or panic, cold and suffocating, washed over me, my fingers numb on the steering wheel. I even drove to the clinic and ran inside, asking if anyone had seen her. The nurses said she hadn't been in. The hours ticked by. The sky grew dark. Jake called back with nothing. He'd only confirmed that she'd left work early. Left early? Where did she go? I pulled over and slammed my fist on the steering wheel. The horn blared, a sharp, piercing sound in the quiet night. I felt so helpless, so out of control. It was the worst feeling in the world. I leaned back in my seat, my chest tight, my hands trembling. Just as I was about to lose it, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered immediately, my voice hoarse. "Hello." There was a moment of silence, then a familiar, weak voice, thick with tears. "Caleb." I shot up, my heart seizing. "Where are you? Are you okay?" I'm at. Her voice was broken, the background quiet. The river. At the park. The park by the river? That was miles away. What was she doing there? Stay right there. Don't move. Text me your location. I'm on my way. I practically yelled, starting the car. Okay. She whispered, her voice sounding hollow and exhausted. I didn't hang up. I couldn't. I needed to hear her breathing, to know she was still there. I don't know how many red lights I ran, my mind singularly focused. Get there faster. I followed her location, abandoning my car on the side of the road and running into the dark park. I searched along the riverbank until I saw her, a small, huddled figure on a secluded bench. She was curled up, her knees to her chest, her head bowed. The old canvas bag sat beside her. I ran to her, panting. Leah? She slowly lifted her head. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes red and swollen, her expression empty and distant, as if she were looking right through me. My stomach clenched. I knelt in front of her and gripped her shoulders. She was ice cold and trembling. What is it? What happened? Did someone hurt you? I asked, my voice low, trying not to scare her. Her eyes slowly focused on me, as if she were just now realizing who I was. Her lips trembled, and a fresh wave of tears streamed down her face. Caleb. Her voice was shattered, filled with a profound despair. I had to follow up with my doctor today. What did she say? My heart sank. She shook her head, sobbing harder. She said, the medication isn't working well enough. I might have to switch to something stronger. More expensive. And, she choked on her words, her breathing becoming ragged. And what? Take your time, it's okay. I held her shoulders tighter, trying to ground her. And she said, with my condition, it might be hard for me to have kids. She finally got the words out, then collapsed against me, all her strength gone. What am I going to do, Caleb? What's wrong with me? I'm so broken. I can't do anything right. She sobbed, a raw, heartbreaking sound, as if all her pain and despair were pouring out of her. So that's what this was about. My heart ached, not for the idea of children, but for her pain and self-loathing. I didn't say anything. I just wrapped my arms around her, pulling her into a tight, secure hug. She stiffened for a moment, then clung to me like a drowning person, burying her face in my chest, her muffled sobs shaking her entire body, her hot tears soaking my shirt. I held her, rubbing her back, my voice a low murmur. It's okay. It's okay. If we can't have kids, we can't have kids. It's not the end of the world. She just shook her head, unable to speak. Listen to me, Leah, I said, pulling back to look at her, my voice firm. I'm here for you, not for some hypothetical kids. You're you, with or without them. Do you understand? You're Leah, the same Leah I fought with and married and divorced. You. She looked at me, her eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling. If the medicine isn't working, we'll find one that does. We'll keep trying, and don't worry about the money. I wiped a tear from her cheek, but another one immediately took its place. You're not broken. You're sick, and when you're sick, you get treatment. That's all. She stared at me, the despair in her eyes slowly receding, replaced by a dazed, fragile dependence. Come on, let's go home. I pulled her to her feet, grabbed her bag, and wrapped my arm around her, guiding her to the car. She leaned against me, her steps unsteady, but she'd stopped crying, her sobs reduced to quiet, shuddering breaths. I settled her in the passenger seat and buckled her in. She stared out at the dark river, her expression still distant, but a little more present. I turned on the heat. As I drove, I reached over and took her cold hand. She flinched but didn't pull away. I held it gently. Next time you have a doctor's appointment, I said, my eyes on the road, I'm coming with you. She didn't answer for a long time. Just as I thought she'd fallen asleep, she whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. Okay. In my hand, her cold fingers squeezed back just a little. Her hand was small and cold, curled in mine like a frightened bird. I held it gently, the car's heater blasting. She kept her head turned to the window, sniffling occasionally. I focused on driving, but my peripheral vision was filled with her quiet silhouette. I pulled up to her building, but didn't immediately kill the engine. Feeling any better? I asked. She shook her head, her voice still raspy. A little. About the medication. Let's talk about it tomorrow, she interrupted, her voice soft and weary, as if she'd surrendered. I don't want to think about it tonight. Okay. I didn't push. Let's get you upstairs. You need to sleep. She nodded and unbuckled her seatbelt. Her fingers weren't as cold anymore. I watched her walk into the building, waiting until the light in her third-floor window came on before I finally let out a breath and drove away. The next day was Saturday. I gave her some space, waiting until almost noon before I went over with groceries. She answered the door quickly, dressed in sweats, her hair pulled back. She still looked pale, but the vacant look was gone from her eyes. "What are you doing here?" she asked, stepping aside to let me in. "Bringing reinforcements." I held up the bags. "You can't live on takeout." The apartment was neater than usual, the mess from the other night completely gone. Her fat cat came over to inspect the groceries. She watched, a little dazed, as I unloaded fish, chicken, and vegetables. "You know how to cook? Who do you take me for?" I shot her a look. "We used to make hot pot all the time, remember? Who do you think made the broth?" A faint memory seemed to stir. The corner of her mouth twitched into a tiny, fleeting smile. "Oh, I didn't press it." I found her old apron, tied it on, and started cleaning the fish. She stood in the kitchen doorway, watching me with a complex expression. "Don't just stand there," I said without turning around. "Go make some rice." "Oh," she said again, and obediently went to wash the rice, splashing water everywhere. I didn't say anything. The kitchen was tiny, and our elbows brushed occasionally as we moved around. I could smell the faint, herbal scent on her, mixed with shampoo. She was quiet, but didn't pull away, just handed me plates and bowls when I needed them. I pan-fried the fish, then added hot water, ginger, and scallions, letting it simmer into a fragrant, milky broth. I stir-fried some greens and made a simple tomato and egg soup. We ate at the small table, sitting across from each other. She sipped the fish soup, her eyes closing for a moment. "How is it?" I asked. "It's okay," she said quietly, then took a piece of fish. That was her code for "it's delicious." I knew her. After lunch, she insisted on washing the dishes. I leaned against the doorframe, watching her. The sound of running water filled the small apartment. Her profile seemed softer than it had in a long time. When she was done, she dried her hands and turned to me, hesitating for a moment. "Thank you." "For what?" "It was just lunch." She didn't argue. She walked to the table, picked up her pill bottle, and took her daily dose without me having to say a word. Then, as if remembering something, she pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her canvas bag and handed it to me. It was a new prescription from her doctor. Tucked inside was a business card for a therapist with an appointment for the following Wednesday afternoon. "The doctor said I should go," she whispered, her fingers tracing the edge of the card. She said, "It might help the treatment work better." I took the prescription and the card, feeling a sense of calm settle over me. Her showing me this, voluntarily, meant she was finally letting me in, even just a little. "Okay," I said, carefully folding the paper and putting it in my wallet. "I'll take you on Wednesday." She didn't object, just gave a small nod. The afternoon sun streamed through the drafty window, creating shifting patterns of light on the floor. She curled up on the sofa with the cat, stroking its belly. I sat in the chair nearby, tried to catch up on work emails on my phone. Every so often, I'd look up at her. She seemed sleepy, her head nodding, the sunlight catching the fine hairs on her cheek. It was a peaceful, almost surreal scene. It felt like none of the bad stuff, the arguments, the divorce, the pain, had ever happened. Like we were just a normal couple on a normal weekend. I knew that wasn't true. The cracks were still there. But for now, the sun was warm, the soup was gone, and she had taken her medicine. The fat cat jumped from her lap, stretched, and then, to my surprise, hopped on my lap, circling once before settling in. I froze, looking down at the shameless creature. Leah saw it too. She didn't say anything, but a genuine, small smile touched her lips before she quickly looked away, pretending to be interested in something outside. But I saw it. I scratched the cat under its chin, and it purred louder. Okay, the iceberg was melting. Slowly, but it was melting. On Wednesday afternoon, I left work early and parked outside the Concord Homes. I didn't have to wait long. Leah came down, wearing a simple sweater and coat, her hair neatly combed, though her face still carried a shadow of weariness. She saw my car, paused for a beat, then walked over and got in. "You didn't really have to come," she said quietly as she buckled her seatbelt. "It was on my way," I lied. She didn't argue, just turned her head to look out the window. The therapist's office was in a quiet professional building, decorated in warm tones, a faint scent of lavender in the air. A friendly receptionist handed her a clipboard with forms. She held the pen tightly. I sat on a sofa in the waiting area, flipping through an old magazine, pretending not to watch her. When the receptionist called her name, she stood up and followed her down the hall. Just before the door closed, she glanced back at me, her eyes wide with a flicker of fear, like a kid on the first day of school. I gave her a small nod, a silent "you got this." The door shut. I was alone in the waiting room. The magazine was a blur, and the ticking of the wall clock seemed unnervously loud. I got up and stood by the window. I didn't know what they were talking about in there. Was she crying? Was she reliving all the horrible things that had happened? After what felt like an eternity, the door opened. Leah came out. Her eyes were a little red, but her expression seemed lighter, less tense than when she'd gone in. The therapist, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, followed her out and gave me a brief professional nod. I paid at the front desk. It wasn't cheap, which was all the more reason not to mention it, and we went down to the car in silence. It wasn't until we were driving that I asked, "How was it?" She stared straight ahead, picking at the edge of her seatbelt. "It was okay. I talk a lot. I don't know if it did any good. It's the first time. It takes a while," I said, trying to sound encouraging. The doctor seemed nice. She didn't reply. We were stopped at a red light when she suddenly spoke, her voice soft. I told her about my parents. I glanced at her. She was still looking forward, her profile tense. I told her how my dad left, and where my mom is. Her voice was distant, as if she were reciting a story about someone else. I told her how they used to fight when I was a kid, throwing things. How scary it was when my mom had an episode. The light turned green. I eased the car forward, letting her talk. The doctor said that's why I'm always so afraid of being a burden, so afraid of being abandoned. She sniffled, turning her head to the window. She said it's a pattern. My heart ached. All her defenses, all her stubborn pride, it had all been forged in that childhood hell. "That's all in the past," I said, my voice hoarse. "It's not," she shot back, a tremor in her voice. "It's still in my head. I can't forget it." I had no answer to that. Some wounds never fully heal. When we got back to her building, I didn't rush her out of the car. "Leah," I said, "look, you're not a burden to me, and I'm not abandoning you." She turned to look at me, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, a lost look on her face. "And I never will," I added, my voice a little rough but firm. She stared at me for a long time, then gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. "Okay, just that one word," but it felt heavier than all the thank yous and "I'm sorry" she'd ever said. She got out of the car, then paused and looked back. "Do you want to come up for a glass of water?" I was stunned. It was the first time she'd ever invited me up for a reason other than an emergency or a food delivery. "Sure." I killed the engine. I followed her upstairs. The fat cat meowed a greeting. She poured me a glass of tap water, and I drank it. We stood there in an awkward but not uncomfortable silence. She walked over to the balcony and looked at the pothose plant. The new sprout had unfurled a little more. "It looks like it's coming back to life," she said softly, almost to herself. "Yeah, it's a tough one." She didn't turn around, but her shoulders seemed to relax. I stayed for about 10 more minutes, then said I should go. She walked me to the door. "When's the next one?" I asked, meaning the therapy session. "Next Wednesday. I'll take you." She didn't argue. I went down to my car, but didn't get in right away. I looked up at her window. She was standing on the balcony, looking down at the pothose plant. She wasn't looking at me, but for some reason, I felt a sense of peace. The cracks were still there, but maybe, just maybe, a little light was starting to get in. The days settled into a new routine. Every Wednesday, I'd take Leah to her therapy session. She'd go in, I'd wait. Sometimes she came out with red eyes, sometimes just looking tired. I didn't push her to talk, but she would occasionally share small things, like her therapist suggesting she keep a journal or analyzing a recurring nightmare. The pothose plant was now thriving, its new leaves a vibrant green. Leah had even started watering it herself. She was still eating like a bird, but at least she would sit with me and finish a meal. Jay called, his voice booming over the phone. "Cal, where have you been, man? You disappear every day at 5 on the dot. Got a secret girlfriend or something?" I glanced over at Leah, who was on the floor, petting her cat. "Something like that?" I mumbled. "No way. Seriously? Who is she? Do I know her?" "None of your business." I hung up. Leah looked up. "Who was that?" "Just Jake, being an idiot." "Oh." She went back to petting the cat, but I could have sworn the tips of her ears were a little red. The weather warmed up. One Wednesday, after her session, Leah seemed lighter than usual. As she got in the car, she said, "The doctor said, my sleep has been a little better lately." "That's great," I said, starting the car. I turned on the radio. A slow old song was playing. I found myself humming along. I glanced over. Leah was leaning against the window, fast asleep. Her breathing was even, her expression peaceful. The sunlight filtering through the window illuminated the soft down on her cheek. It had been a long time since I'd seen her sleep so soundly. The light turned green. A car behind me honked. She didn't stir. I gently pressed the accelerator, taking a longer, smoother route home to avoid waking her. I parked in front of her building, but didn't turn off the car. I just sat there, listening to the radio and watching her sleep. A few minutes later, she woke up on her own, looking around, disoriented. "Oh my God, I fell asleep? Why didn't you wake me? You look peaceful." I turned off the car. "Come on, let's go." She seemed embarrassed, smoothing her hair as she got out. As she unlocked her apartment door, she said, so quietly, I almost missed it. I don't think I've slept that deeply in years. That's because I'm a smooth driver, I joked. She didn't argue. Instead, she smiled. A real smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. That evening, I ordered takeout. After we ate, she washed the dishes while I sat on the sofa with the cat. When she came out, she didn't retreat to her usual corner, but sat on the other end of the sofa, a comfortable distance away. We watched a loud, obnoxious reality show on TV, neither of us really paying attention. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was warm. I cleared my throat. So, what did the doctor say about your next appointment? Same time next week, she said, her voice low. Okay. The show went to a commercial. Hey, you want to go see a movie this weekend? There's a new one out, supposed to be pretty good. The words were out before I could stop them. Was it too soon? She didn't answer right away. Just as I was about to backtrack, I heard her whisper, okay. What? I hadn't heard her. Okay, she said, a little louder, her head still bowed. A weight I didn't even know I was carrying lifted from my chest. Okay, great. It's a date. Saturday afternoon. Okay. The obnoxious commercial ended. She stood up. I'll get you a glass of water. Oh, okay. I watched her hurry away, a small smile playing on my lips. The iceberg was finally, definitely melting. Spring was coming. On Saturday, I woke up early, more excited than I'd been for a work presentation in years. I almost cut myself shaving. When I got to her building, I texted her, I'm here. No reply. 5 minutes later, no rush, take your time. Another 10 minutes passed before she replied, coming. Her coming took another 15 minutes. When she finally emerged, I was surprised. She was wearing a light-colored dress and a cardigan. Her hair was nicely done, and she had on a little makeup. She looked pretty and nervous. I got out and opened the car door for her. Sorry I'm late, she mumbled. No problem, I just got here, I lied. The drive to the mall was quiet. I bought the tickets online, I said just to say something. Okay, you want sweet or salty popcorn? Either is fine. Great. We were back to one-word answers. At the theater, I went to pick up the tickets while she waited by the movie posters. I bought us 2 bottles of water. When I handed one to her, our fingers brushed. She pulled her hand back quickly. Inside, the lights went down. It was some cheesy romance movie. My attention wasn't on the screen. It was on her. She was completely engrossed, the light from the movie flickering across her face. During a sad scene, I heard her sniffle. I glanced over and saw a tear slide down her cheek. She quickly wiped it away, embarrassed. I pretended not to notice, a strange, warm feeling spreading through my chest. After the movie, we went to a quiet Cantonese restaurant for dinner. She talked more than usual, analyzing the plot, telling me which part she liked. Her eyes were bright, alive. After dinner, we walked through the plaza outside the mall. A vendor was selling balloons. Leah stopped and stared at them. When I was a kid, she said softly, I always wanted one, but my dad said it was a waste of money. I looked at her sad, nostalgic expression, then walked over to the vendor, bought the brightest, happiest-looking yellow teddy bear balloon, and handed it to her. She was stunned, staring at the balloon, then at me. Here, I said, this one won't fly away. She took the string, her fingers trembling. The yellow of the balloon reflected in her eyes, chasing away the shadows. She didn't say anything, just looked at the balloon for a long time. Then she smiled, a real, genuine smile that lingered, full of a shy, quiet joy. On the way home, she tied the balloon to the grab handle in the car, and the little yellow bear bobbed along with us. The smile never quite left her face. Leah, I said at a red light. She turned to me, her eyes still soft. Yeah. Let's do this every week. The light turned green. As I pulled away, I heard her whisper. The yellow teddy bear balloon bobbed happily all the way back to her apartment. I parked the car. She untied the balloon, holding the string in her hand. You can keep it, I said. It'll brighten up the place. She shook her head. It's too big for the room. She got out of the car, the balloon floating beside her in the evening breeze. The street light cast a long, lonely shadow. I got out and locked the car. Let's go up. She nodded but didn't move. She looked up at the balloon. I had a really nice time today. I was taken aback. I never heard her say anything like that. Good, I said, trying to sound casual. Me too. We went upstairs. In the dark hallway, she didn't rush ahead like she used to. At her door, the cat greeted us, then saw the balloon, hissed, and arched its back. Leah laughed, a light, airy sound, and tied the balloon to the cat tree. The cat stared at it, suspicious and fascinated. I stood at the door, not coming in. Well, I should go. She turned to me, looking like she wanted to say something, but just nodded. Okay, drive safe. Did you take your medicine? I asked. I did. Good. I started to leave. Caleb. She called my name. I turned back. She stood in the doorway, twisting her hands together. Her voice was a little lower. Next time it's my treat. I raised an eyebrow. Your treat for what? The movie. Or dinner. Her voice got smaller, but she held my gaze. You shouldn't always have to pay. That warm feeling was back. Okay, when you get your next paycheck. She seemed relieved and nodded. I went downstairs and leaned against my car, lighting a cigarette. I looked up at her window. The yellow balloon bobbed into view for a second. I smiled. It was worth it. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. We'd see a movie on the weekends, or just walk by the river. The suffocating silence between us was gone. Then one night, I got to her place late after work and knew immediately that something was wrong. She took a long time to answer the door. She was in her pajamas, her hair a mess, her eyes red and swollen from crying. What is it? I asked, my heart clenching. She shook her head, her voice raw. Nothing. I'm just tired. I followed her in. The air smelled faintly of cigarette smoke, a habit she'd kicked years ago. Her journal was open on the table, a few lines blurred by tears. I still can't do it. They all left. Why is it always me? My stomach dropped. She collapsed on the sofa, hugging her knees to her chest, her shoulders shaking. Leah, I knelt in front of her. She flinched, her voice muffled and desperate. It's not working, Caleb. None of it is working. I'm still like this. I get better for a little while, and then I fall apart again. I can't take it anymore. She was spiraling. Every step forward was followed by a crushing step back. What happened today? I asked gently. She just shook her head, refusing to speak. I closed the journal. Go wash your face, okay? She didn't move. I went and got a warm, damp washcloth and gently wiped the tears from her face. She didn't resist, just closed her eyes, her wet lashes resting on her cheeks like a broken doll. I sat on the floor next to her, not saying anything, just being there. After a long time, her voice, small and broken, cut through the silence. I saw my mom today. My blood ran cold. Her mom was in a psychiatric hospital. The hospital called, said she wanted to see me. Her voice trembled. I went, and she didn't even know who I was. She was holding a pillow, calling it her baby, calling me by the wrong name. Then she grabbed my hand and told me not to be scared, that she would protect me. And then she pushed me away and started screaming that it was all my fault. She broke down completely, burying her face at her knees, her sobs choked and raw. My heart ached for her. I reached out and put my hand on her trembling back. It's not your fault, Leah. Your mom is sick. She doesn't know what she's saying. I know, she sobbed, but it hurts so much, Caleb. Right here. She jabbed a finger at her chest. I took her hand, then let it out. Don't hold it in. She leaned against me and finally let go, crying until she was empty, her hot tears soaking my shirt. I just held her, rubbing her back, just like that night at the clinic. But this time, she didn't push me away. When she finally quieted, she was completely drained, leaning against me, her eyes vacant. Am I ever going to get better? She whispered. Or am I going to end up like my mom? No, I said firmly, pulling her closer. You're not like her. You're fighting. You're getting treatment. You're getting better. It just takes time. She closed her eyes, exhausted. Rest now, I said. I'm here. I helped her to bed and sat in the chair beside her, watching over her as she fell into a fitful sleep. The moon cast long shadows in the room. I knew this was a long war, full of battles won and lost. But this time, when she was at her lowest, she wasn't alone. And that was enough. I sat in that chair all night. As dawn broke, I went to the kitchen to make some porridge. I just started when I heard her stir. She was sitting up in bed, looking dazed. You're awake? I said softly. She looked at me, then at my wrinkled, tear-stained shirt, and looked away, embarrassed. I'm sorry. For what? For getting your shirt wet. And for last night. It's fine, I said. The porridge is almost ready. Go wash your face. She came out a few minutes later, her eyes still puffy, and sat at the table. We ate in a comfortable silence. Was I a mess last night? She asked quietly. We all have our moments. My therapist said, allowing myself to be vulnerable is part of the healing process. She's right. She seemed to relax a little and finished her porridge. As she was washing the dishes, she said, It's stronger than me. Bullshit, I said immediately. You saved that plant. You've survived all of this. You're stronger than you know. She turned and looked at me, a flicker of something new in her eyes. It wasn't a smile, but it wasn't sadness either. It was resolve. Caleb, she said, her voice steady, next month. I don't want to live here anymore. I was surprised. Why? Is the landlord giving you trouble? No. She shook her head, her gaze sweeping over the small, cramped room. I just think, it's time for a change. This place, it's not good for me. I knew what she meant. This place was a prison of bad memories. Okay, I said immediately. What are you looking for? I'll help you find a place. She shook her head. I'll find it. You can. Just come with me to look at them. I saw the determination in her eyes. It was a new look for her. Okay, I said. Whatever you want. She smiled, a small, genuine smile. When I left that day, she didn't say thank you or sorry. She just stood at the door and said, drive safe. Finding a new apartment was a trial. Leah was determined to do it herself, spending hours scrolling through Zillow and making awkward phone calls. The first few places we saw were dumps. She was getting discouraged. Look, I said, I know a guy in real estate. I can ask him to. No, she said immediately. I can do it. That stubborn streak was back, but this time it didn't annoy me. She was fighting for herself. The last place we saw was a bit of a drive, but it was in a new building, a one-bedroom, clean and simple, but with a huge floor-to-ceiling window that flooded the living room with light. Her eyes lit up the moment she walked in. She walked through the apartment, her fingers tracing the clean countertops, her gaze lingering on the view from the window. How do you like it? I asked. She was silent for a long moment. It's expensive. The rent was higher than her budget. The sunlight is worth it, I said. She looked at me, her expression torn. I could see how much she loved the place. Let's just keep looking. She finally sighed, ready to give up. We'll take it, I said suddenly. Both she and the real estate agent stared at me. Caleb, Leah protested. It's too much. I'll pay for half, I said, looking at her. Consider it an investment in solar energy. Before she could argue, I had signed the lease and transferred the deposit. The agent left, leaving us alone in the empty apartment. Leah stood in the middle of the living room, looking stunned. What are you waiting for? I said, tossing her the keys. Let's go buy whatever you need for the place. She caught the keys, her expression a mix of frustration and something else. Why do you always do that? Do what? Make decisions without asking me. Her voice was soft, but there was no anger in it. Because if I asked, you'd say no. I walked over to the window. Look at this view. That pothose plant is going to love it here. She came and stood beside me. The sun was warm on our faces. She took a deep breath, her tense shoulders finally relaxing. It is bright, she whispered, a small smile on her lips. Moving day was easy. She didn't have much. A few boxes, the now thriving pothose, and the fat cat. I spent the day assembling furniture while she unpacked. By evening, it was starting to look like a home. Bright, clean, and full of light. We ordered a pizza and ate it on the floor. Better than the old place, right? I asked. She nodded, a small smile on her face. The window is bigger. Feeling better? She looked out at the city lights, then back at me, and gave a small, quiet amho. Then it was worth it. The new apartment seemed to make a real difference. The sunlight was a constant presence. The pothose was growing like a weed, its vines starting to trail down the wall. The cat loved napping in the sunbeams. Leah was still Leah. She still took her medicine, still went to therapy. But the constant tension in her face had eased. She even bought a small radio and would listen to old songs while she cooked. Sometimes, I'd find her curled up by the window with a book, the sun turning her hair to gold. I try not to crowd her, but every time I came over, I noticed small changes. A few new plants on the balcony, fruit in the fridge. She was even trying to cook with disastrous but hilarious results. One day, I came over to find her staring at a pan of blackened, unrecognizable lumps. It was supposed to be teriyaki chicken, she said, her expression crestfallen. Looks fine to me, I said, choking down a piece. Just a little. Crispy. She burst out laughing, a real, uninhibited laugh. It was a beautiful sound. But I knew this illness was a monster, always lurking in the shadows. One afternoon, I was running late. I let myself in with the spare key she'd given me. The apartment was quiet and dark, the setting sun casting long shadows. She wasn't in the living room or the bedroom. My heart started to pound. I pushed open the bathroom door. She was sitting on the cold tile floor, curled up against the bathtub, her head in her knees. An open pill bottle lay beside her, a few pills scattered on the floor. Leah. I knelt beside her, my voice soft. She didn't move. I touched her shoulder. She flinched, then looked up, her face streaked with old tears, her eyes red, swollen, and empty. What's wrong? I asked, my voice tight. Are you hurt? Did you take your medicine? She just stared at me, her eyes slowly focusing. Her lips trembled, and a fresh wave of tears streamed down her face. I don't want to take it anymore, she whispered, her voice raw with despair. It's not working. Nothing is working. I still feel so awful. She pulled her knees to her chest, her shoulders shaking violently. There's this emptiness inside me, and it's always there. I can't breathe. She was back in the black hole. I didn't say anything. I just sat down on the cold tile floor next to her. Okay, I said. Then don't take it right now. Just rest. She started to cry harder, a choked, broken sound. I'm sorry. I'm doing it again. I can't control it. It's okay. I put my hand on her trembling back. Just cry. I'm here. She didn't pull away. She leaned into my touch, her sobs echoing in the small bathroom. I just sat there, rubbing her back, as the sun went down and the room grew dark. After a long time, her crying subsided into quiet, shuddering breaths. She lifted her head, her face a mess. She looked at me, sitting on the floor with her, a dazed, embarrassed look in her eyes. The floor is cold, she rasped. I know. I didn't move. After another moment of silence, she slowly, tentatively, rested her head on my shoulder. It was a light, uncertain touch. I stiffened for a second, then relaxed, letting her lean on me. Caleb, she whispered, her voice soft and tired, am I completely useless? Don't be ridiculous, I said, looking at our distorted reflections in the chrome faucet. You're the toughest person I know. She didn't answer, her warm breath soft against my neck. After a moment, she whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. Don't go. I'm not going anywhere. We sat there in the dark, the silence comfortable, the world outside fading away. Eventually, her breathing evened out, and she fell asleep against my shoulder. I carefully lifted her into my arms. She was so light, and carried her to bed. I tucked her in, then went back and picked up the scattered pills, putting them back in a bottle on her nightstand, next to a glass of water. I spent the rest of the night on the sofa, not sleeping, just watching the moon move across the sky. I knew this wasn't over. This was a long, hard fight. But this time, when she was in the dark, she wasn't alone, and I would stay with her for as long as it took. I woke up on the sofa, my back aching. In the pre-dawn light, I peeked into the bedroom. Leah was still asleep. I went to the kitchen and made breakfast, fried eggs and toast, the toast a little burnt. She came out as I was setting the table, looking dazed. You're awake? I said. Breakfast is ready. She sat down and took a bite of the burnt toast without a word. We ate in silence. Last night, she said, her voice still hoarse. Thank you. Don't start with that again. No, she said, looking at me, her eyes serious. Thank you for not being annoyed with me. I didn't know what to say. My therapist said, these setbacks are part of the recovery. She said, next time, I should try to tell you before it gets that bad. She wasn't apologizing. She was strategizing. Okay, I said, next time you feel that way, you can yell at me, throw things at me, whatever you need to do. Just don't hold it in. A tiny, fleeting smile touched her lips. Why would I yell at you? To let off steam? I can take it. She smiled again, a little wider this time. You're an idiot. Later that day, we went to her therapy appointment. She was quiet on the way there. I'm going to tell her about what happened last night, she said. When she came out, she looked lighter. What did she say? I asked as we got in the car. She said that a breakdown is normal. What's important is how you put yourself back together afterward. She turned to me, a new, determined light in her eyes. She said this time, I put myself back together faster than ever before. A wave of emotion washed over me, a mix of pride and relief. That's because you're a badass. She didn't argue, just smiled. As we were driving, she looked down at her hands and said softly, I think I want to try to lower my dosage. My heart skipped a beat. The doctor said it was okay, she added quickly. She said we can try, slowly. If it doesn't work, we can always go back. I gripped the steering wheel, then relaxed. If you think you're ready, I want to try, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I reached over and covered her hand with mine. She didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her hand over and laced her fingers with mine. Okay, I said, we'll try. The dosage reduction was slow, incremental. There were good days and bad days, but the terrifying, complete breakdowns seemed to be gone. She started painting, filling sketchbooks with watercolors. They weren't masterpieces, but they were full of color. One day, I came over and found her sketchbook open. On the page was a simple, childlike drawing of sun, and underneath, in pencil, she'd written, a good day. I didn't feel sad. My heart swelled. She came out of the bedroom and saw me looking, and quickly snatched the book away, her cheeks flushing. It's nothing. No, I said. It's everything. The day came when I was waiting for her outside the therapist's office, and she walked out with a look on her face I'd never seen before. It was a dazed, radiant joy. What is it? I asked, my heart pounding. She looked at me, her eyes shining. She took a deep breath. She said I can start as slowly carefully wean myself off the medication completely. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. All those years, all those pills, all that pain. It could finally be over? Are you serious? She nodded, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling, a huge, brilliant smile. I can't believe it. I pulled her into a hug, lifting her off her feet. I can. You did it, Leah. You did it. That night, we went out to a fancy restaurant to celebrate. Afterward, we walked along the river. I'm still scared, she admitted. What if? What if I relapse? Then we'll deal with it, I said. We've done it before. We can do it again. I'm not going anywhere. She stopped and turned to me, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Caleb, thank you. For everything. It wasn't me, I said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. It was you. You saved yourself. She looked at me for a long moment. Then, she leaned in and gave me a soft, quick kiss on the corner of my mouth. It was sweet and tentative and over in a second. She pulled back, her face bright red. We should probably go. It's getting cold. I stood there, stunned, the spot on my lips tingling. On the drive home, the silence was electric. At a red light, I looked at her flushed cheeks and shy smile. Leah, I said. She turned to me, her eyes wide. What? What was that? She took a deep breath, her blush deepening, but she met my eyes. It was... Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. Exactly what you think it was. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I leaned in and kissed her, a real kiss this time, slow and deep, and full of everything we'd been through. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. I rested my forehead against hers. Okay, I whispered. Just wanted to be sure. She didn't answer, just buried her face in my shoulder, her body finally, completely relaxed in my arms. After that kiss, Leah moved back in with me. The pothose plant and the fat cat came too. Life fell into a new, peaceful rhythm. Until the day the doorbell rang. We were on the sofa, watching some dumb reality show. Are you expecting someone? I asked. She shook her head. I opened the door to find my mother standing there, holding a reusable grocery bag, looking ready for battle. Mom, I said, trying to block the doorway. What are you doing here? You didn't call. I don't need to call to check up on my own son, she said, trying to push past me. I brought you some of your father's pot roast, and I wanted to see what kind of a pigsty you were living in. Her voice trailed off. Her eyes widened, staring over my shoulder at Leah, who had just stood up from the sofa, looking terrified. The three of us stood there, frozen. The canned laughter from the TV show sounded ridiculously out of place. My mom's expression shifted from confusion to shock to a dawning, horrified understanding. Mom, no, ma'am, Leah stammered. That one word broke the spell. My mom looked from Leah to me, her eyes narrowed. Caleb, she said, her voice low and dangerous. What is going on here? Are you two involved again? Mom, let's talk inside, I said, stepping aside. She walked in, her eyes never leaving Leah. She sat on the sofa, her back ramrod straight. Leah scurried to the kitchen to get her a glass of water. Don't you lie to me, Caleb, my mom hissed. After everything that happened, after how much pain you were both in, have you lost your mind? Mom, it's different now, I said. She was sick back then. We didn't know. Sick. Leah came back with the water, her hands trembling. I explained everything as gently as I could. I told her about the depression, the struggle, the slow, painful recovery. My mom listened, her expression softening from anger to a deep, sorrowful understanding. She looked at Leah, her eyes filled with a new, compassionate light. When I was done, she was silent for a long time. Then she sighed, a heavy, world-weary sound. Oh, you poor child, she said to Leah, her voice thick with emotion. Why didn't you tell us? We could have helped. I'm so sorry, Leah whispered, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't understand what was happening myself. I just felt like I was a burden and I was ruining his life. My mom looked at her, then at me, her expression a mix of frustration and love. She stood up. Well, you're both adults. I can't stop you. She looked at Leah. Honey, when you're ready, come over for dinner. Your father-in-law. Well, your ex-father-in-law. He misses you. Leah burst into tears, but this time they were tears of relief. At the door, my mom grabbed my arm. You be good to her this time. You hear me? That girl has been through hell. Don't you dare mess this up. I won't, Mom. I promise. I closed the door and turned to find Leah standing in the middle of the living room, a relieved, watery smile on her face. That was terrifying, she whispered. I pulled her into a hug. It's over now. She loves you. She always has. Life moved forward. Autumn arrived, and Leah started acting strange. She was tired all the time, nauseous in the mornings. Are you getting sick? I asked, worried. I'm fine, just a little rundown. But it didn't stop. I finally dragged her to the doctor, fearing a relapse. The doctor asked a few questions, then sent her for some blood tests. We waited in the sterile, cold waiting room, my anxiety mounting. The doctor looked at the results, then at us. Well, everything looks normal here. He paused. When was your last period? Leah told him the date, then froze, her eyes widening and dawning. Impossible realization. My heart stopped. The doctor smiled and wrote out another order. Let's go ahead and run an HCG test, just to be sure. The next hour was a blur. When the results came back, the doctor, a kind-faced woman in the OB/GYN department, beamed at us. Congratulations. You're pregnant. About 5 weeks along. The world dissolved into a roaring in my ears. I turned to Leah. She was ghostly pale, her whole body trembling, tears streaming down her face. But the medication, she stammered, her voice choked with a mix of joy and terror. From the timeline, it looks like you conceived after you were completely off the medication, the doctor said gently. We'll monitor you closely, but for now, everything looks perfectly healthy. In the car, Leah was still crying a torrent of overwhelming, unbelievable emotion. Caleb, she whispered, clutching my arm, I'm so scared. I took her cold hands in mine. Don't be, I said, my voice thick. I'm right here. We're in this together. My mom's reaction to the news was a chaotic explosion of joy. My dad, quiet and stoic, just clapped me on the shoulder, his eyes shining. We were a family again. A few days later, sitting on the sofa, I pulled 2 small, red booklets from my pocket and handed them to her. She opened one. It was our marriage certificate. We'd gone to the courthouse that afternoon. She looked at me, her eyes wide and shimmering with tears. Caleb, I know we're already a family, I said, taking her hand. I just want to make it official. Again, she didn't say anything, just leaned in and kissed me, a long, slow kiss full of promises and second chances. Life is not a fairy tale. There's still hard days. Sometimes the shadows creep back in at the edges. But now, Leah doesn't fight them alone. She talks to me. She lets me hold her until they pass. Her father is a ghost, a bad memory we never speak of. Her mother is still in the hospital. Leah visits her sometimes, and on the good days, her mother smiles at her, a brief, flickering moment of recognition. Leah says it's enough. Some wounds never heal, but you learn to live with the scars. As for me, I look at her now, her belly starting to swell, her face soft and serene as she paints by the window, and I know, with a certainty that settles deep in my bones, that this is what home feels like. It's not about the big condo or the fancy dinners. It's this, her, our messy, beautiful, hard-won life. The pothose plant has taken over the entire balcony. It's a jungle out there, vibrant and unstoppable. It turns out some things, once you think they're dead, just need a little light, a little water, and a reason to grow. That evening, we were quiet. She lay in my arms, her hand resting on her still flat stomach, her eyes shining in the dark. Every few minutes, she'd whisper, Is this real, Caleb? Am I dreaming? It's real. I'd answer, kissing her forehead. It's all real. The next day, I took the day off. I went out and bought non-slip mats for the bathroom, padded covers for every sharp corner in the apartment, and a mountain of books on pregnancy and parenting. Leah watched me, a bemused, loving smile on her face. You're being ridiculous. I'm being prepared, I said seriously. You are now a precious, fragile national treasure. She laughed, and the sound was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. That weekend, we went to my parents' house for dinner. Over dessert, I cleared my throat. My mom paused, a piece of cake halfway to her mouth. My dad looked up from his newspaper. I took Leah's hand. We have some news. I took a deep breath. Leah's pregnant. My mom's fork clattered onto her plate. My dad's newspaper slipped from his fingers. For a second, there was dead silence. Then my mom let out a sound that was half sob, half cheer, and launched herself at Leah, hugging her tightly. Oh my God, are you serious? Oh, honey, this is wonderful. It's a miracle. She was crying and laughing at the same time. My dad, his eyes suspiciously bright, just came over and pulled me into a fierce hug. That's my boy, he whispered. After the initial explosion of joy, my mom pulled back, her expression turning serious. But what does this mean? For you too. I looked at Leah. She smiled at me, a calm, steady light in her eyes. She gave a small nod. I reached into my pocket, pulled out 2 small, red booklets and placed them on the table. Mom, Dad, I said, my voice clear and strong. We got married again. Yesterday afternoon. The room was silent again. My mom stared at the marriage certificates, then at our joined hands, her face crumpling as a fresh wave of tears streamed down her cheeks. She buried her face in my dad's shoulder, sobbing with pure, unadulterated joy. My dad wrapped his arms around her, his own eyes wet. He looked at us and gave a slow, deep nod. Good. It's good to have you back. The whole family, together again. On the drive home, the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Leah leaned against the passenger seat, tracing the gold lettering on our new marriage certificate, a soft, serene smile on her face. At a red light, I leaned over and kissed her cheek. She turned to me, her eyes sparkling like 1,000 tiny stars. Mr. Evans, she said, her voice full of a gentle, playful warmth, I look forward to our future together. I took her hand and placed it over her belly. Me too, Mrs. Evans. Me too. Her father was never heard from again. Her mother remains in the care facility, with good days and bad. Leah visits and finds peace in the small moments of connection. Some wounds, she's learned, don't disappear. They just become part of your story, reminders of how far you've come. Our story. I look at her, asleep beside me, her hand resting on the gentle curve of her stomach, and I know, this is it. This is everything. The car pulls into our driveway, toward the warm, waiting lights of home.